This is a 60-year-old journal. It was on display in a museum.
I know what it is.
I thought you might. I'm supposed to look to the past, right? Lady Weybridge was living in the swamp when the swamp creature was discovered by the explorers 60 years ago. Lady Weybridge. She was living here when Boggy was first discovered by the explorer. I've been looking into the history of this place.
Oh, really? Did you find anything?
Yeah. You.
You must be confused. You found me today when you barged into my house. Remember?
You were already living in the swamp when the explorer came here 60 years ago.
The explorer? That man they talk about in the museum?
The one who originally discovered Boggy. You know who I'm talking about. His sketches and notes are the only real evidence we have for this creature.
You already have his journal. You learned to read, I assume. What else do you need?
There's a page missing from the journal. I think you know where it is.
Why on earth would I know something like that?
Because you were the only person here when the explorer visited the swamp. I have a suspicion that the swamp creature wasn't the only thing he discovered.
You're suggesting he gave me a page from the back of his journal? Or what, that I stole it?
I really have no idea. If I could see it, I might be able to make up my mind.
It doesn't belong in a museum. It belongs here, with me. You understand?
What if I promise I'll return it after I finish clearing up this mess?
Then I'll show it to you.
Is this you? He drew you into his journal? It's beautiful.
60 years ago, yes. He left the page with me. We agreed the rest of the world would manage without it.
I think there's something on the back. What's this? Footprints. I think it's time I went to talk to Officer James.
You finally returned. Well, did you find the swamp creature? Where is he?
I didn't find him.
What? You're not getting paid to wander about aimlessly, Grimoire. Get back out there.
I don't need to.
Why not? I thought he was our prime suspect.
Not anymore.
Didn't you find photographic evidence of Boggy from last night? Let me see that photo. If that's not Boggy, what is it? If that's not Boggy, what is it?
I found designs for the costume in a trash can. Not only that, I collected all the pieces of the costume myself. Well, nearly all of them. There's still the one that...
But the footprints at the scene of the crime! How can you prove these don't belong to a real creature? How can you prove these don't... How can you prove these don't belong to a real creature? How can you prove these don't... How can you prove... can you prove? How can you prove? How can you prove? How can you prove the? How can you prove these don't belong to? How can you? How can you? How can you? How can you? How can you prove? How can you prove? How can you prove? How can you? How can you? How can you prove? How can you prove? How can you? How can you? How can you prove? How can you? How can you prove these?